You know that Keeley Companies is all about fostering the world-class culture through their incredible cultural pillars. Well, it was time to add a seventh cultural pillar, Keeley Green. Guided by the mission to raise the sustainability standards by which they design, build, operate, and live, Keeley Green is dedicated to using a holistic approach to leave a positive impact on our environment, create a future that is sustainable for generations to come. In the words of Rusty Keeley, we are just getting started. You can learn more about that just getting started mentality and all the work they do by visiting my friends at Keeley Companies online at KeeleyCompanies.com.
Welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. John is the #1 national best-selling author of the book On Fire. He's a world-class inspirational speaker, and he's the host of the Live Inspired podcast. John interviews extraordinary individuals on their life story so that you can wake up from accidental living and more fully live your life story. Here's your host, John O'Leary.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. Born in a small town in Vietnam, our guest today, her name is Haven Shepard, was just 14 months old when she miraculously survived a bomb explosion that left her orphaned and resulted in the loss of both of her legs below her knees. Adopted then into a loving family with 6 athletic siblings here in the United States, Haven discovered something incredible: swimming, a sport that brought her freedom, gave her purpose, and then a path to the Paralympic success. It's an incredible story. Today, Haven is a celebrated athlete. She's an advocate for adaptive sports, and she's an amazing individual. She joins us right now to share how tragedy shaped her strength, provided gratitude, and why perspective defines what is possible, and the importance of grace in overcoming life's mighty challenges. My friends, this young lady has overcome some significant adversity. And as you listen to her voice, you're going to hear something that I think we need during this season and every season of life. Are you ready for it? Joy. Joy. So family, friends, brothers and sisters, my friends, this conversation is a powerful reminder that adversity does not need to define us. Instead, it can reveal our capacity to rise above. So without waiting any longer, let's jump into the pool together with my friend, and now yours. Her name is Haven Shepard. Haven, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
Hey, what's up, guys?
It is a joy to have you on our show. So I'm going to begin not with my long rambling introduction, but I'm going to have you introduce yourself. If I happened to bump into you in Carthage, Missouri at a grocery store, and I said, Haven, I'm John. And you said, I'm Haven. And I said, hey, Haven, tell me about you. How do you answer that question, Haven?
Yes, I'm Haven Shepard. I am 21 years old and I am a professional swimmer. I actually am a Paralympic athlete, and I grew up in Missouri from the age of 20 months old up to 21 years old.
That probably has people asking the question, tell me more, and tell us ultimately why you're on the O'Leary podcast. So we're going to be unpacking that today. But as I was telling Haven right before we hit record, if it was only an athletic story, I'm not sure we'd be talking about it today. This is an athletic story. It's a vibrancy story. It's an overcoming story. More than all of that, this is an awesome life story. Buckle up, get ready for a wild ride. Haven, you mentioned, John, I came to Missouri at about 20 months of age, which means you were somewhere else before you were 20 months of age. Talk about your earliest childhood.
My life actually began before Missouri and everything. I was actually born in Vietnam, and I was born in Da Nang. And I was born to 2 people that had an affair and had me. And in Vietnam, women can't divorce husbands, so there was no way they could possibly be together. And they have this baby that is product out of this wedlock affair, and with no hope. And we really don't know the entire story, because we don't have no witnesses, no nothing. So the story that we're told is that my biological father came back to my mom's hut, and he strapped on both of us and held me, and it was going to be this beautiful family suicide. If I can have you, no one will. They decided to commit family suicide, and they strapped bombs onto themselves, and they held me, and all the damage was done to my legs. I was blown 40 feet away from the explosion. Somebody found me and they drove me 2 hours to the hospital in Da Nang. And I was there for 46 days. And the only reason I got to stay in the hospital for those 46 days was because other people in the hospital donated money for me to stay and get the medical treatment I needed. And which is crazy, I've never had another surgery ever since then. So I've only had the one big amputation. They amputated my legs right below the knee. I have both my knees, and I honestly think they're pretty perfect since I haven't had another surgery. But even the doctors in Kansas City at Children's Mercy, they've always said, "We couldn't have done a better job in United States." I'm like, "Yes."
You just went through the kind of story that I spent 2.5 hours watching on Lifetime with my wife, when we're on vacation and it's raining outside, and you went through it in 47 seconds. So I'm going to have you go tick by
Yeah.
tick for a moment with us as we go through this experience because it's overwhelming. Just to walk through it with you, your biological parents recognize that they can't have a life together. It's a very small town in Vietnam and it's inappropriate in every way. And so they realize, well, if we can't do this, then we're all out. Like we're going to take our own lives and our baby's life. You said that so matter of factly. When the lights turn off at night and you think about it for a moment, what strikes you about even that part of the story?
I just can't help but have a lot of grace for them. I consider myself completely American. I was raised here in very good Missouri, Midwestern town, and like we will never experience extreme hunger and extreme hopelessness and extreme poverty. We take for granted like our faucets turn on and it's hot water, and that's a luxury. And we will never know what led up to that point. And I think it's very humbling, and I give them a lot of the reason I say a lot of grace is because I could never be in that experience and know what to do
Right.
except for take the pain away somehow, take away the pain of the shame of having this affair and then having this baby and then not being able to get divorced. And then I can't even imagine not having this new baby and not even be able to feed myself. But now I have to take care of this new baby. I give them extreme grace because I wouldn't know what to do in that situation either. And us in America will never have to experience it because that's just not our reality. And especially in those other countries, when children are being adopted, I think it's very wrong to think international adoption is, oh, that's don't adopt from other countries because you're just taking them away from their culture. Guess what? There's a reason why they're in an orphanage, and that's the reason I got adopted.
Mm.
So I thank God every day, every time I lay down and I write in my journal, and I just have extreme gratitude for the life I've got to live. And living a life in Vietnam with no legs, I don't think I would have gone very far as I have now.
Mm. You mentioned you were blown 40 feet away from the explosion site.
Mhm,
And you even use a word that in the United States, I don't know if I've ever personally used it to describe a room I've walked into. You said, when my father came into the hut,
mhm.
this is a very small, very humble dwelling spot. And you are then launched away from it, which means not only are your parents now dead, they're trying to race you to a hospital, your fellow villagers, family members.
Mhm.
That's 2 hours away on a motorbike. I know you don't remember, but just explain to our listeners and our viewers what that journey would have been like for the person driving.
Yeah, so my parents now, my adopted parents, they actually took that whole journey to come and get me, and we'll get into that to their journey later, but they said it was like a 2-day experience just to get up to my grandparents.
Yes.
So, my biological mom's parents took care of me when the explosion happened, so they were the ones that took me to the hospital and did all my medical procedures, all that stuff. But there were what we know now, they were just simple rice farmers, and they probably didn't have the money to keep me in the hospital or even take me to the hospital. And the only reason people I got to stay in the hospital was because people donated every single day. And now their daughter is dead. They have her baby out
Yeah.
of the affair, and they have to go back to dirt floor, hut, steel ceiling. My parents saw it and it was very like it just we can't even express it. We have never had that experience in our life. That is our reality of that. There's no shower. There's nothing for this disabled baby in this village. And so they took care of me for the see, I was exploded when I was 14 months old, and then I was adopted when I was 20 months old. So that was like 6 months that I was with them and got to rest. And but they were going to put me in an orphanage, a disabled orphanage, because they couldn't take care of me because times are tough and they can't take care of this disabled child, let alone they can't feed themselves. How am we going to feed this other little baby that's going to have to grow up here?
But we all think we live in our world, and we
Mhm,
forget we live in the world, and it is wildly connected. So
mhm,
halfway around the world in Carthage, Missouri. I mean,
mhm.
don't blink, right? I'm a Missouri guy myself, but don't blink. It's a relatively small town. There's a woman, a mother of six, who's just doing her life, man, and it's already extraordinarily busy. And she feels this calling on her heart to become an adoptive mother. She doesn't know you, doesn't know your story, doesn't have any idea what's going to happen next. But would you just talk a little bit about this mother of six and this feeling she has that she needs to become a mother of an adoptive little girl?
My mom is Shelly Shepherd, and she was living a very busy life. She has 6 children. She has a boy, 4 girls, and then another boy. And we have our own business. Life was going good. And then there was one day they were at church and somebody brought up international adoptions. But it's a tough sell to your husband when you already have 6 kids to adopt. And they had 14 sports schedules at the time. My brother Zach was playing college basketball at Pitt State, and my sisters were off doing their own thing. And I will describe, I'm a little fast forwarding here, but my childhood, I will describe it as summers, I was at ballparks, winters, I was in basketball gyms, falls, I was in volleyball gyms, and during spring, I was at track meets. My food group as a child was popcorn, hot dog, Skittles, and an occasional slushie. That is, I grew up in a sports family, so I needed to keep up, and that's exactly what my mom thought of. If we adopt, we'll adopt like regular little girl. But my parents actually went through couples therapy for 2 years because she wanted to adopt so bad in her heart. And like I said, it's a tough sell for your husband of 6 saying, "Hey, let's get just one more."
I mean, it's amazing. Before you were even born,
Mhm,
I just think this is the way God works, this is the way life works. Before you were even born, your mother knew like that she had a place in her home and in her heart ultimately for you. And it was a fight and it was
mhm.
hard, but eventually your poor father gets worn down through couples therapy and bride.
Yeah.
And up, and then a friend in the community says, I've read about this little girl.
Yes, so going through all that with my parents of just constantly bringing it up, she actually has a vision when she was driving one day that there was this little girl on the road. And she was like, "Oh, that's so weird." And then that was when she finally had the courage to tell my dad, "Hey, we should adopt." And then the day that he said yes was the day that my mom got a call and from my mama Pam, that's what I call her, Pan Cope, and she said, "Hey, I saw this newspaper. I think we can adopt this little girl that just got her legs amputated in Vietnam. I think we could bring her here on a medical visa to America and get her adopted." My parents actually went on this adventure to get me for another family. They land in Vietnam, leave their 6 children at home. They fall in love with this adorable little orphan with no legs, and they go through that 2-week experience with me. They love me, and they forget that they have to give me to this other family. So honeymoon's over, and they were devastated. And it turns out the other family wasn't a good fit. And so Pam calls up my mom again and says, "Hey, things aren't working out at the other house. Do you and Rob still want her?" And my mom goes, "Yes." And I think when she said yes to bringing me home. I think she said the credit card statement after that was about $2,000. She was like, new stroller, new clothes, new car seat, new everything. So when I came home that night, she said I came home around 6 o'clock. And it was in November. I think it's November 23rd. I came home and everybody came over and my big welcoming party. And the that was it. I was theirs from there on.
So before you come home to Missouri and celebrate your first ever Thanksgiving as now a 20-month-old who does not yet understand the language or the holiday, you were a little orphan being held by people who you did not know with a different skin tone, a different language, a man with a dark beard. Like everything about the situation screams something that would make me very uncomfortable as a child. And yet my understanding is as these two individuals, your eventual parents showed up in your life that you just grabbed onto them.
Oh, yeah. My mom was very intentional with raising her children, but my whole life, she said I always had this calling and this understanding of life. So eventually, when they got me those 2 weeks in Vietnam, she prayed that I would know that they were there to help me. And boy, I did. I absolutely loved them. I just really had a deep understanding as a child, very old soul. I understood that they were here to come get me. I never cried. And that was the crazy thing. I never cried during this whole trip, too, because I just knew deep in my soul that they were there for a reason. My parents, knowing this deep calling of, oh, we're falling in love with her. Oh, we have to give her away. And they were just pleading and pleading that, oh, this can't be our baby. We need a kid with feet. We have 14 sports schedules. Zach's about to start college ball. We can't, we have to have a kid that keeps up. So that was their bigger concern. But little did they know I was going to keep them the busiest out of all their children. But really crazy story, though, when my mom had the courage to tell my dad that she thinks she wants to adopt. She did all the math, and that was like 2 years before they ever came and got me. The day that she told my dad about me was the day that I was conceived.
Wow.
So the time that she told and then the time like trying to come and get me, all this stuff, I was born, I was conceived, born, and then had my accident, and then they came and got me. And so all of that timing is really crazy.
I was going to wait until the end to even ask, but do you recognize how miraculous the mere fact that you are alive is?
Oh, yeah, I don't let them forget that every single day. You know how lucky I am to be alive, and I know how lucky I am to be alive, and I feel like there was a great divine intervention over my life to know that I was called to a greater purpose and that I wasn't done that day, basically. I I wasn't done for.
So this happens to you when you're a little baby. You come to the United States, you slowly become part of this family. I understand at age 3, which is still so young, and you have
Mhm.
no legs, you're going to start swimming.
Oh, yes, my swimming story actually comes through a little later in my life, but my it's weird the swimming how it correlates into my life. The first time I ever smiled with them was when I was in a pool in Vietnam, and then we had a pool in our backyard, and it was really important for my dad for all of us to know how to swim. So I learned how to swim at 3 years old. That was really important for my dad, and so I always grew up swimming. That is where the pool has always entered my life was out of the safety measures of my father.
With your prosthetic legs, at the end of a long day, do your knees hurt? Does the area that makes contact with the prosthetic hurt? What's that walking through life with legs below your knees that aren't yours?
It's honestly just secondhand at this point, and it's like another form of an extension of my body. But when I try to describe having prosthetics to people, it's like when you wake up in the morning, you put on your glasses to see in the morning, and you're not even thinking about it. When I wake up in the morning, I put my legs on to go to the bathroom. It's just that second nature. It's that quick thinking. Oh, this is just something I have to do. I never think, oh, I have to put on my legs. But it does hit around 7 o'clock where I am very done wearing my prosthetics.
Wondering.
I get my dog and I go to my room and I say, legs off time. I'm clocked out.
So does the pool offer a reprieve from that?
Oh, yes. That was the biggest reasons why we put me in swimming at 10 years old. I was actually in track for a very long time, and I hated every single minute of it. I told my dad one time after a track meet, I said, "Dad, I'm pretty prissy too, so just take this with a grain of salt." I told my dad, "I just keep getting this stuff in my eyes. Like it comes from my forehead and it comes in my eyes." And he was like, "Sweat?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't like that." So they decided to put me in swimming, and I already knew how to swim, so it was pretty like second nature. But the pool really gave me a lot of relief that track didn't. Track was very contact sport, and swimming I could take off my legs and just be free.
Yeah. I've heard you say in the past that your mother, maybe one of the greatest gifts she gave you was the gift of perspective. The list of things mom has provided you is extraordinarily long.
Mhm.
But one of the things that you're able to leverage and then share up on each day is, and she insisted upon perspective. What do you mean by that?
My mom is a life coach. She's really into the people business. I always say also with her having 7 children, she didn't have 7 children to just have 7 children. She had 7 children to raise 7 children, and she raised us each very individually and spoke over our lives and gave us each and every one of us a certain divine purpose for our lives. And so
Oh,
mine was a big perspective, and she, even like the days I would go to school in the car, she would be like, "Okay, what can you make this day to be better?" If somebody looks at you funny, you just need to know that they're just looking at you because they're curious, and that life could be so much. People don't get the opportunity to go to school all day long. You might be in a wheelchair. You might the school not wouldn't be accommodating to you to let you use the elevator and stuff. It could be worse, Haven. And I've always had a really tender heart. I always knew, yeah, I totally understand that. I never took it. Mom, just be quiet and let me complain for once. But it's
right.
true. There's nothing really to complain about. Life is honestly extremely easy. There's not much bad about our lives. It's very simple. And that's the way she kept it with me. It's very simple. People don't look at you because they're wanting to hurt your feelings. People are just looking at you because they're like, gosh dang, I've never seen an Asian person in Carthage with no legs before.
So I just want to make sure everyone heard that. You can rewind the tape at your own convenience, but life is so easy. Life is so simple, says this woman whose parents died in a suicide explosion, who was flown halfway across the world, who is raised in a distant community by a new family without legs, who struggles, I'm sure, from time to time with pain, both physically and emotionally, that in spite of the struggles, it's good.
Life is very good. Like
So
living in this small town. If you ever been to Carthage, the
your
Hallmark
city
town it
hall, I
is.
think is it City Hall, that primary main building?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That your city hall's about as pretty a building as there is anywhere in the country. It's a stunningly pretty building. When you were growing up, did you feel like you belonged, well, number one, in this family? There's 6 other kids. Did
Mm.
you feel like, yeah, I'm the seventh and I belong? And then secondly, did you feel like you belonged in this community?
Oh yes, of course. We're the more is more family. The more people that come in, the happier we are. The second I came home on that November night right before Thanksgiving, it was I know. I was getting piggyback rides. My oldest brother, Zach, that was in college, he was recently married with his wife. So they both came home from college to meet me. And I always had a very, like I said, I had a very like tender heart. So I knew I was there for a reason. And having 4 older sisters, I was definitely their baby. And I've definitely felt like their baby a lot of times. Haley doted me around all the time. I
Yes.
wonder if she ever thought, "Oh, I wish this was my baby." My other sisters, like, they always wanted to cuddle me, hold me, like, I knew I was very loved, and in this community really rose up. They didn't have the guts to do that. They knew the shepherds, were a very special breed, and I know, I feel like a lot of people had a lot of admiration for them, and nobody else went on that adventure. Nobody had the guts to get out of this town to go on that adventure to get their child.
It's so wild. I understand that your mother may have had a passport because she went on a cruise. That's just island hopping. To
Yeah.
fly, and I've been to Vietnam before, to fly to Vietnam, to then travel to a small town and get on a motorbike.
Mm.
It is a wild, difficult journey
And it's
for a
some
woman with 6 kids and a husband. out of Carthage, Missouri. It's a little town, 30 miles outside of Springfield.
It's an hour from Springfield, but even Springfield is small compared to St. Louis or Kansas City. Like Mi Carthage, Missouri is like town of 15,000. It's a Hallmark town. We
Yeah.
have the coffee shops, like nothing special happens around here.
Something happened special because I'm on the call with her right now. So let's talk about the folks that you've encountered as you've aged who talk about struggling with their sense of self. People, whether they have an amputation, whether they were brought up in a family that was difficult, whether they've been through a tragedy, you hear all these stories now. They share them with you because you feel like a safe haven for them.
Mhm.
What's when people struggle with their sense of self and their sense of life and their sense of meaning, what response do you give to them? What's the feedback and encouragement?
I especially see nowadays, and our culture is very different now than it was like 10 or 15 years ago. Amputees that were 10 or 15 years ago that grew up like that are older in the 50s, 60s, they had to hide all the time about their disability or whatever. And I'm out there. I remember being a teenager, 16, walking through Target, and I just had these people come up to me and, oh, I have an amputation, and they lift up their gene or whatever. I've never seen anybody with an amputation that looks like me and was walking around like this. I was like, but to me, it's like second nature. Yeah, I'm just hanging out with my friends. I'm 16. It doesn't like I did that didn't click in my brain. But as I gotten older, I've realized the culture of being different is very much more widely accepted because we realize being original has been it's way more cool than just blending in. I feel like the culture of look like everybody else, do what everybody else is doing, and then you won't be seen. But now it's pretty cool to stand out. So my biggest advice to anybody that is struggling with anything like that is knowing that how original you are. There's
Mm.
no one else like you, and you need to embrace it. And there has been times in my life where, oh, I shouldn't have embraced myself that much because I've gotten myself in trouble a few times with my loud mouth. I recommend everybody spend a lot of time with yourself and to get to know yourself because the more you know yourself, the more it comes out of you. And being your own original flavor is way cool than just being vanilla.
I do. And I think acting is exhausting.
Oh, yes. And especially, you know how hard it is to be like everybody else, buying whatever, wearing what everybody else is wearing, saying what everyone else is wearing. It's way more easier just to accept yourself for who you are and realize that you only need like one friend.
It's funny you say that. They recently filmed a movie about our life and my experiences and my story. And when they were putting clothes on the guy portraying John O'Leary, dude, we had to go back to almost like Goodwill shelters because you wear clothes that were popular 20 years ago. So like
Mhm.
today, like I'm wearing the same shirt that I probably wore when I graduated college. Like it's nice not to pretend to be anybody else, but
Yeah.
to embrace fully the gift of who you are.
Yeah, and you have to realize the people that you change yourself, and especially in the professional circle where you're with all these professional athletes, Olympic athletes, Paralympic athletes, you realize how much I wasn't willing to change enough about myself to fit in. So
Right.
that's why I didn't have very many people that wanted to be friends with me because no, I'm not going to talk bad about her. I'm not going to talk bad about him. I'm not going to say this to be cool to fit in. I wasn't willing to compromise my sense of self and my morals and my values just because it makes you uncomfortable. That's not how I was raised. And being raised by my very strong willed mother, I had to know that she raised me better than that. I represent my parents out there, especially when I was younger, when I was in my teenage years and I was on these international stages and I was not with my parents 24/7. I wasn't with my parents very much growing up,
Right.
honestly. Like I had requirements as an adult, as a teenager, as the same as adult. Like you have to go to this many training camps, you have to go to this many swim meets. Like I actually wasn't with my parents that much. And so when I went out to these international competitions, Italy and Peru, all this stuff, I represented my family. And it was not right of me to not act the way that they have raised me to be a good person and not to talk smack about just because somebody beat me in a race. That's not how I was raised.
So you are a gold medalist, you're a Paralympian, you are profoundly successful athletically. And yet I've heard you say in the past that winning doesn't drive you, having fun and living life does. That's a
Oh,
really cool line. I'm going to say it again. Winning doesn't drive me. Having fun and living life does.
yes, I will let you know. I'm not very competitive person, and it drives my father insane. But I've always thought that the times I have won in my life, oh yeah, those are really like great highs. But the thing is, I've lost quite a bit. The fastest swimmer in the United States. I'm definitely the second fastest, but I never needed that top spot to be happy or to know that I had value. And I would much rather have my dignity and values rather than being the top person in the United States at swimming. Like that just wasn't worth it to me.
You are not only an athlete, you're also a model. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
But you're not vain in the least. So just talk about the congruence between being celebrated for your accomplishments and your beauty and being completely undefined by it.
Thanks, John. I modeled so I could keep my swimming afloat because you want to know something? Swimmers don't make that much money. I'm going to be so honest. And so I did modeling from a very young age to support my swimming. It's definitely slowed down because I'm not the well oiled machine that I used to be, John. But yeah, I've gotten to go to so many great places with modeling and so many opportunities. I think some of my favorite traveling memories is when I've modeled and not for my swimming, if I'm gonna be honest.
Give me an example. And I know you're with
Uh,
Reese's and among other organizations, but whether it was in a performance, a shoot, a client, what's been your favorite so far?
oh, there's been so many great ones, but I think the one that sticks out to me the most was I usually travel with somebody because it's not really safe for a young teenager to go to New York City by herself, obviously. But my sister, I actually had a photo shoot in New York City, and it was for Google. It was for their new Pixel watch or something. And my mom had to stay back because my other sister was having a baby. So my sister Ivy, who's never been to New York City, hasn't really traveled that much. I took her, and it was like the best experience ever because she had a great time in New York City. I got her a nice little hot dog, and we called it a day. But we were only there for 16 hours, and we like flew out like the next morning. So I think
Right.
that was the best day. We got to go down to Brooklyn, and I got to run down the street like I do on my regular life.
Have I know a lot of folks follow you, a lot of folks look up to you. Has there been an experience of meeting someone, whether it's in an airport, outside of a pool, in New York, in Carthage, or anywhere else, where you realized that your impact is reaching far beyond your own life, where someone else's life is improved and better and moving forward because of an experience with you?
That's a great honor if I've impacted somebody's life that way. But I think honestly, the friends that I've had along the years, I've impacted their life and they vice versa me too. I've had friends that we met when we were 8 years old. They've lost their legs to cancer,
Wow.
accident, whatever. All still stay in touch to this day. And the thing is, like, and you experience this too, probably, when you have a disability, you can have friends at school, you can have friends in your day-to-day life, but nobody's gonna understand you the way that your friends do that you have that also are going through the same thing in life. But the times that I have met people out and about in the wild, I hope they've had a good experience because you never know what I'm gonna say.
I love that about you. You do not know what's going to come out next, but it's always joy filled. And one thing that I also know you and I share is a first pitch at a Cardinal game. I had some butterflies before mine. I'm curious how you felt before your first pitch and then how you feel you did.
Oh my gosh. I've never seen my dad that close to just like having a panic attack because I was in Springfield. I couldn't practice with anybody to catch a ball. So he sent me in the mail. What are those balls with the holes in it and it's plastic wiffle balls? He was like, keep throwing those at a wall or something and you practice. That first pitch was quite nerve-wracking for my father. I was like, if I hit the backstop, it's not my fault. Like, I'm a swimmer. I don't know what I'm doing.
You threw a strike, man. And Cardinals may be looking your name up as we get ready for next season because they desperately need some pitchers right now. So keep your phone on, please, Haven.
Oh, yes, I love to be the first girl MLB player.
And then one other thing that you mentioned to me right before we went live, and then I'll begin moving toward the finish line with you, is I said, what do you hope people get out of our time together? And what you said was so beautiful. I actually wrote it down, but it was, John, you don't need a dramatic story to make a dramatic difference.
Oh, yes.
And here's this woman with a very dramatic story, but you are reminding the rest of us with seemingly more ordinary stories that we can use those stories to make a dramatic difference. What do you mean by that?
I just believe everybody's really special and everybody was made for a divine purpose. And just because I've had a lot of life experience doesn't make the person at the grocery store less important. Everybody has some magic in them that they just haven't tapped into yet. And if it's at 13 years old, like me, or if it's at 70 years old, everybody has something super special in them. They just have to tap into. And that's the biggest thing I want to encourage people is that tap into your magic, tap into what your true purpose is, what brings you life. And a great example is my mom, like simple housewife, husband runs this company, they honest people. She had a very simple life and then she went on this amazing journey to find her I don't want to brag, but the love of her life, me. She went on this
Yeah.
amazing journey.
Humble brag.
Yeah, humble brag. She went on she made on this amazing journey just to meet the love of her life, and it was me. It truly impacted her life, and nobody has heard her story yet. Nobody has heard the woes of her life, but she's truly had an amazing life, and she's made a dramatic difference just in our community. The people that have come up to her and said, "You've inspired me to adopt. I want to talk to you about this," and the people that she's counseled. I just believe everybody can truly make a difference in this world. And if even if it's small, and not that my life is just, I know it's super out there and it's crazy, but it's not how I wanted my life to go. It's not my divine purpose, my dream, but it's really cool. But everybody gets to have a cool moment. Everybody gets to have their cool moment.
Final question before we get into the Live Inspired 7. You began our conversation by sharing a little bit around your birth parents. And you said, John, I just give them grace. I just give them grace. There's so many folks right now who were raised the wrong way and resent their parents, who were mistreated last night at the dinner table and they resent their spouse, who had neighbors who voted a way they do not agree with and now they hate their neighbors. And I could go on and on. What is your advice when we feel like someone else has done something to us that negatively affected us and we can't get past it? It's just something we bring into every day of our lives. Their decision is still negatively impacting my life today. How do you help us let that go and be free as we swim forward?
Yeah, I truly agree with all that. And all you can say is grace, but grace is not easy. Like you can say grace all you want, and then you're nice on a little piece of hardwood from Hobby Lobby, and it can say grace, and you can just read that all day long. Doesn't actually mean you believe it. But when you forgive somebody, it truly means you're taking on, that sorrow in your heart. And at the times I've been very disappointed in my life, forgiving somebody just basically means you're taking all that blame for yourself, taking all that hurt and hatefulness and honestly dread of, oh, I'm going to put this on you because I can't deal with it. When you
Yeah.
forgive somebody, that means you take all that for yourself and you move on. You got to keep moving forward. Like in Meet the Robertsons, it says keep moving forward because guess what? Life is going to keep going and you're going to stay in the same spot. But if you take your life experiences and you take the heartache and you keep moving forward, it makes you a stronger person. You grow up. Even in like my parents and my siblings, they're all older. They're still all growing up. Everybody is still growing up. We only get to live life once, by the way. Everybody's doing this for the first time. Just keep giving grace and keep moving forward.
Haven, I've loved our time together. We have 7 questions that tether all of our guests together, whether
Yeah.
they live in a pool and win the gold medals that way, or whether they live on top of the mountain and they do some downhill skiing. So get ready to make some waves. The first question is, what's been the most impactful book that you've ever read?
Oh, goodness. The most impactful book I've ever read, it was called A Voice in the Wind. It's by Francine Rivers. That book taught me patience out of anything in my life because the book goes through this girl's life and it takes a very long time. And it just proves time and time again that God was in her life and moving the chess pieces where she needed it to be
Mm.
ultimately at her very divine end.
What is one positive characteristic or one trait that you possessed as a little girl growing up that you wish you exhibited as brilliantly today? I know you're in your early 20s, but what's something you possessed as a young girl that you wish you modeled more?
I just had no doubt as a kid. As a kid, you had that child mind of nothing's impossible. But now, as an adult, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to like learn how to do PowerPoint. It's crazy. But I think the biggest trait for me as a kid, just seeing life as bright and as brilliant as I saw it as a kid.
If your home caught fire, your parents are out, your siblings are out, the animals are out, and you have an opportunity of running in and grabbing one item, what's that one physical thing you would grab?
I think that dream catcher behind me, I made my grandpa made that out of wooden. He carved out the wooden feathers himself, and I strung all the beads from places I've been. I drilled holes into seashells, and that is a very prized possession of mine that my grandpa made for me.
If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous day and have a long conversation with anyone living or deceased, who would you like to be next to?
I think I would sit with Jordan Pierce.
What would you ask Jordan?
I describe him like I describe Cliff. I can't remember his last name, Cliff, that goes around the college campuses and talks. I would just ask him life advice. They both have the presence of a father, of that calm spirit, that safety, that warmth. And every time I can even get really teared up like when listening to him talk of he has such tenderness and that you want in a father or a grandparent. It brings you great amount of warmth and honestly hope for your future, and that's what they give. And so I really enjoy both of them.
What's the best advice Jordan, Cliff, or anyone else has ever provided you? So the best advice you've ever received is,
The best advice actually has been from my mom. She told me at a very young age, the only thing that's holding you back in your life is your perspective. And that's how what we talked about. Only thing that's holding you back in your life is your perspective. And things can be a lot worse. You can see life a lot worse if you twist it in your mind, but not to say positive thinking is the only way to live your life. It's just you can only positive think your way through tragedy or heartbreak or anything like that. But I truly am thankful, and I think because I've gone through something so traumatic as a child, I have a different perspective on life because I've got a second chance, basically.
so the next question, it's a second to final question, but it's specifically what advice would you give yourself at age 20? But you're so close to age 20 that I don't like the way that one sounds as you answered. So I'm going to ask it differently. If you could go back and give yourself a little bit of advice when you're 20 months of age and you're getting ready to leave Vietnam for your future new home in the United States, what would you whisper to that little girl as she's getting ready to go on a flight for the first time?
Mm, buckle up because you're not going to know where your life is going to take you. Your life, you're going to be on a plane at 13 years old with no cell phone. And I flew more internationally before I even could drive a car. I think it's just crazy. And I have so much more gratitude now that I have perspective on it. But I want to tell that little baby she was so loved and had such a divine purpose for her life and that she is where she needs to be.
Haven Faith Shepherd, it has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like your one sentence to read?
I'm just thankful. I'm really thankful for my life. You never know where the wind's going to take you because I truly believe in the wind and that it flows through your life. And it flows through seasons. So I really think go where the wind takes you.
Grateful for her life and willing to go where the wind took her next. And I'm grateful that
Mhm.
it took her to the Live Inspired podcast with us today. Haven Faith Shepherd, your journey is so awesome. And I'm so grateful that you spent a little bit of it with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
My friends, that is Haven Shepherd. My name is John O'Leary, and today is our day. What a gift it is. Don't blink and live inspired. Well, as I mentioned in our conversation before we went live, I asked Haven Shepherd what she wanted to get out of our conversation today. And this young woman with a beautiful old soul said, John, you don't need a dramatic story to make a dramatic difference in life. I love that, family. Listen to it again. You don't need a dramatic story to make a dramatic difference in life. My friends, if you enjoyed today's episode, you will love my conversation with Bethany Hamilton. Bethany Hamilton was just 13 years old when she became a household name around the world after being attacked by a shark while surfing. She lost her arm and nearly lost her life. But just 1 month after that attack, she returned to surfing. Today, nearly 2 decades later, Bethany is a professional surfer. She's also a wife, a mother, and an incredible role model. Her amazing story was shared in the award-winning biopic, you may have heard of it, Soul Surfer. That movie was directed by On Fire, the film's director, Sean McNamara. Sean, my good friend, directed the movie On Fire. He also directed my good friend Bethany Hamilton's movie, Soul Surfer. To listen to Bethany's interview, you can check it out at episode 178, or you can cruise on over with me right now online to johnolearyinspires.com/podcast. We'll have a link when you get online that will drive you directly to Bethany's site. You can check it out, episode 178 or johnolearyinspires.com/podcast. Well, family and friends, servants, leaders, overcomers, all of us with dramatic stories able to make a dramatic difference, I want to thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Live Inspired podcast. And I want to remind you of something the media may forget. You ready for it? The foundation is firm. The headwinds may be real, but God is still God, and the best is yet to come. That is awesome news. So for this time, and until next time, my name is John O'Leary. Today is your day. What a gift. Live inspired. Keeley Companies was started almost 50 years ago by the one and only Larry Keeley. What started as a small family-owned paving company in St. Louis has grown to a nationally known full-service construction, development, and restoration partner. Larry the Legend, as he is affectionately known, has been a part of this growth every step of the way and continues to provide guidance as his son, Rusty, my buddy, drives their vision and achieves results on purpose. His unwavering foundation of a family culture with a focus on people has gotten Keeley Companies to where they are today, and their journey is truly just beginning. To learn more about Larry the Legend and Keeley Companies, check them out at KeeleyCompanies.com.